With a history spanning over 125 years, Blackpool Pleasure Beach has seen many iconic rides come and go. Older attractions making way for new additions. Join us as we uncover the story of 10 more lost rides from this historic amusement park. One of the shorter-lived attractions at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the Rainbow was installed at the north of the park for the 1987 season. Located on the site originally home to the Virginia Reel and more recently Ranger. A ride model from manufacturer Huss, Rainbow was originally built for the German Fairground circuit in 1983. It was purchased by Pleasure Beach in 1986 and installed the following year. Featuring a 36-seat gondola attached to a long arm, Rainbow sported bright and colourful decorations, staying true to the name. Riders would sit in one of 3 rows of seats, facing outwards. The gondola remained upright as the arm rotated, providing riders with a rising and falling sensation, as well as intense laterals. Its striking design and location close to the funhouse ensured Rainbow's popularity. The intimidating experience often drawing a crowd of spectators, eager to watch family and friends on board. Rainbow was removed before the 1991 season and was transferred to sister park Southport Pleasureland. The area where it was once located is now home to the Globe Theatre. Joining the rides in the north of the park, Monster was installed close to the funhouse for 1968. It had originally operated in Canada the prior year, being located at Expo 67, a World's Fair held in Montreal. Monster was a popular octopus-type ride, and one of many installed around the world during the same period. Blackpool's version sported a deep black colour scheme, but also featured colourful lighting. Monster consisted of 6 arms radiating from a central point, each arm holding 4 ride cars. Cars sat 2 riders, who were secured with a lowering lap bar. The attraction would rotate, the 6 arms rising and falling, cars at the end spinning around a central axis. Ride vehicles could also spin, creating a disorientating ride experience. Monster was extremely popular when it was installed, and that popularity remained for most of its life. The experience wasn't as wild as it looked, leading to it being enjoyed by all ages. Monster would give its last ride in 1995, before being removed. It was last seen in pieces at Pleasureland in Southport. The park area was later used for the construction of PlayStation The Ride, an S&S Space Shot. Located close to the south entrance gates, Tokaido Express was a powered roller coaster that opened in 1980. The ride was a Supertrain ST40 model from manufacturer Pinfari. Featuring a figure-8 layout, Tokaido Express was one of the more modest roller coasters located at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, and catered to younger visitors and families. Originally located outside, in 1987 a canopy roof was constructed over the ride to protect it from the elements. Riders would sit in pairs secured by lap bars. Trains would then begin their journey with a curve and an uphill straight reaching the maximum height of 23 feet. The track then curved downwards, entering the figure-8. Riders would speed through the station ready for another lap. The second lap usually faster than the first, reaching the top speed of 25 miles per hour. Depending on the operator and length of the queue, trains would complete multiple rides around the circuit. In 1994, Tokaido Express was dwarfed by the opening of the big one, sitting close to its towering lift hill. After 17 years at Blackpool, the roller coaster would give its last rides in 1997 and was removed from the park. The area that housed Tokaido Express would be used as an ice rink the following year, before eventually becoming home to Bling and later Red Arrow's Skyforce. Tokaido Express would be relocated to Breen Leisure Park for 1997, opening there as Figure of 8 and operating until 2001. Opening in 1960, the cableway was an aerial ropeway from Swiss manufacturer Von Roll. Costing the park £50,000, inspiration for the ride came from a similar attraction at the 1958 World's Fair in Brussels. Geoffrey Thompson, then managing director, liked the idea and wanted to install a version at the Pleasure Beach. The cableway not only provided a scenic view of the park, it also improved visitor flow around the site. At the time, Blackpool Pleasure Beach was divided in 2 by Watson Road. The introduction of the cableway provided an efficient transportation between the north and south parts of the park. The cableway was the first method that allowed visitors to travel between the two halves without having to cross the road below. Eventually, Watson Road would be bridged in 1966. Starting at a station close to the Virginia Reel, visitors would board one of the circular suspended gondolas. Gondolas were painted red and yellow, and guests would rise to a height of 80 feet during the 800-yard journey. During their flight, guests would see Blackpool Pleasure Beach from a new angle. Parts of the classic roller coasters and the historic dark rides could be spotted. In later years, a bird's-eye view of construction of the park's newest attractions would be seen. The ride would set down riders to the south of the park, close to the turnaround for roller coaster. By the late 1990s, many similar skyways at parks around the world had begun to be removed. With the turn of the millennium signalling the end of Blackpool's classic attraction, the cableway transported the last riders in 2000, with the system listed for sale. It was removed from the park, but the two buildings that once housed the station still remain and can be seen in the park today. Initially located in the north of the park and later moved, Turtle Chase was constructed for the 1935 season. The attraction was originally called Tumblebug, which is also the name of the ride type. Turtle Chase featured a circular steel track atop a concrete base. The track was composed of a single rail that undulated over small hills around the circuit. Ride cars were shaped like turtles and were attached to a central point. Riders board one of the turtle cars sitting facing inwards on circular seats. Motors on each vehicle propelled riders around the circuit, rising and falling over the hills. After almost 80 years at the park, Turtle Chase had been eclipsed by larger and more thrilling additions. It would give its last rides in 2004 and was removed from the Pleasure Beach. The plot would sit vacant for a number of years, before eventually being used as part of the site for Icon that would open in 2018. For the 1980 season, Blackpool Pleasure Beach added a new water ride. Originally opening under the name Water Shoot, this was not a new attraction, and the ride had originally operated at Manchester's Bellevue Zoological Gardens. This circular water chute opened there in Easter 1957, becoming one of the most popular rides at the park. Bellevue closed in 1978, with the water chute briefly operating the following year before being moved to Blackpool. The ride would be installed in the north of the Pleasure Beach, between the station for the cableway and the funhouse. The water chute was essentially a side friction roller coaster with a water splash. It featured a simple circular layout that saw a lattice of metal supports topped with a wooden track. Visitors would board one of the 7 6-passenger boats. Once dispatched, boats ascended the lift hill to a height of 70 feet. At the top, a 180-degree curve lined boats up with the one drop. The angle of descent matched the lift hill, and boats rushed downwards, picking up pace and reaching the top speed of 45 miles per hour. At the bottom, a water-filled pool slowed boats, unleashing a giant splash to the delight of riders, and often reaching further, soaking onlookers. When Valhalla was under construction in the late 1990s, Water Chute was renamed Vikingar to fit with its neighbour. However, the spectacular new ride blocked Vikingar from view when it opened in 2000, with the modern attraction making the aging Water Chute look decidedly dated. The next year, Vikingar would not operate. Despite not being listed on the park map, it would reopen again in 2002. It would give its last rides on the final day of the season in 2003, breaking down at 3 p.m. and never reopening. The wood and metal structure stood at the park for a number of years before being removed. The area where it once sat now off limit to visitors. One of the earliest rides to be installed at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, the Whip joined the ride lineup at the park in 1921. It was originally located in the north of the park, close to the area where the dancing fountains are today. Manufactured by American firm W.F. Mangles, the Whip cost Blackpool $4,700 to purchase and construct. 2 riders would sit in small cars similar to a waltzer. Cars were arranged around an oval track and attached to a cable that circled a central platform. Wheels at each end of the platform would turn, moving the cable and pulling the cars along. When they reached the wheels at the end, riders would pick up speed, with cars swinging outwards, whipping around the corners. It was a fun ride, and one that was common at many travelling fairs and amusement parks during the time period. The Whip was moved later in its life, and would sit partially under Revolution. It was the last remaining attraction of its type in Europe, as well as the oldest operating flat ride at the park. However, it would eventually close in September of 2008, having spent 93 years at Blackpool. The location was later used to house the park's dodgems. Trauma Towers opened at Blackpool Pleasure Beach in 1999. Costing the park £1 million, the walk-through ride experience was a clever combination of two previous attractions at the park. Constructed on the location of the Whip, the Haunted Hotel would open at Blackpool for the 1980 season. This was a walk-through attraction, and visitors would enter a dilapidated hotel for a tour through several themed rooms. In 1987, spinning ride Tagada was installed next to the Haunted Hotel. This attraction saw visitors sit in a round bowl without restraints. For 1999, both the Haunted Hotel and Tagada would be combined to become Trauma Towers. The exterior would be refreshed and extended, and the indoor scenes changed or updated. The Tagada would become the grand finale of the experience. Situated close to the Wild Mouse, visitors would enter the front of the building, themed to a ramshackle hotel. The interior consisted of narrow corridors with some funhouse gags, as well as a cast of animatronic characters. Those brave enough to explore would pass through numerous rooms, including the lobby, lounge, bedroom, bathroom and library, as they journeyed through the strange hotel. Visitors would eventually reach the baronial dining hall, which would act as the finale for the experience. This large room contained the Tagada ride in the centre, and was decorated with statues, suits of armour and chandeliers. Guests would sit around the perimeter of the ride, with a large dining table in the centre. The attraction would spin, accompanied by music, lighting and special effects, including blasts of air and water spray. Upon the conclusion, a pair of double doors would lead visitors out to the front of the attraction. Although popular and fondly remembered, Trauma Towers would not open in 2009, closing for good. One reason for the closure was supposedly due to the building becoming damp from the adjacent dancing fountains. For many years the attraction was left standing but not operating, with the building eventually being demolished in 2018. Originally located where the Alice in Wonderland ride now sits, Grotto was a track dark ride aimed at Blackpool's younger visitors. With the arrival of Alice in 1962, the attraction was moved and rebuilt, close to the lift hill for the roller coaster. The ride was designed and built in-house, and by the time Beaver Creek was created, it was known by the name Magic Mountain. Visitors approached the building housing the attraction, which was covered with fake rockwork and featured a colourful entrance sign. Inside they were aboard a small circus train, which was their transport through the ride. The train passed numerous tableaux filled with animatronic characters. Scenes included the construction of Stonehenge, woodland creatures, a circus, the freezing North Pole, an Arabian marketplace, and even a Western saloon filled with drinking animals. In 2010, Blackpool Pleasure Beach announced plans to transform Beaver Creek into Nickelodeon Land for the following year. Unfortunately, this would mark the end for Magic Mountain. The dark ride had entertained younger guests for over 80 seasons, but would close on September 6th the same year. When Nickelodeon Land opened in 2018, the indoor Magic Mountain had been replaced by Dora's World Voyage. This outdoor boat ride was inspired by the animated television series. Originally named Turnpike, the Grand Prix attraction gave young guests a chance to get behind the wheel of miniature race cars. Opening in 1960, the ride was manufactured by Arrow Dynamics. Arrow would go on to build many of the park's dark rides and roller coasters, developing a strong relationship with Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Starting at an elevated station in the centre of the park, riders would board two passenger vehicles, themselves styled as classic racing cars with small petrol engines. The ride track featured a central guide rail, but drivers had some freedom with the steering. The route spiralled downwards, eventually reaching ground level close to Watson Road. The track would then travel through the centre of the park, and in later years the Avalanche roller coaster passed overhead. After reaching the station for the big one, riders would complete a turn, travelling northwards before spiralling upwards and returning to the station. Being one of the older rides at Blackpool, Grand Prix saw many attractions being constructed over, next to and around it. It received an overhaul at the end of the 2002 season, the cars being modified to become electric powered. After 64 years at the park, it was announced that Grand Prix would not open to the public for the 2024 season. It was stated the closure was due to planning for a new attraction. Just don't ask any questions. Blackpool is a park that has seen untold transformation. Evolving from a collection of beachside amusements to become the modern park we know today. With old attractions making way for new concepts, the memories of the lost rides live on, sparking the imagination of those who visit.